Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is me, Cyber Warrior. This is CyberWarriorStudios, and we are once again here for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour. Now, before we get started, let me introduce you. With me, as always, my friend, my partner in crime, Eric Bellardo Cyber, also Cyber Papa. How you doing, Eric?
Hey, doing great. How are you doing? And we're back with another great episode on a Friday. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Carolina, as always, welcome. This is what, your second time on the show?
It is, yes. Thanks for having me.
That's amazing. And we got a great episode planned today. But before we get started, as I see you have a drink and I have a drink, and I'm sure there's quite a few people in chat that have a drink, cheers, salute, and let's enjoy the evening. So today's episode is all about the ethics behind sales, especially in IT and security. Now, as someone who has been doing sales for quite some time, I'm sure you've come around a bunch of people that are very unethical in what they do. I've seen it. So for starters, what would you say is one of the most unethical things you have seen someone do in your journey?
Ooh, that's tough. From a fellow salesperson perspective or just in general?
In general, because people reach out to you too to try to sell you stuff. I mean, it happens. Sure. So it could either be in general or something that you've just come across.
I'd have to say just right off the bat, if I had to pick something that I've seen very commonly that I think is unethical, so maybe it makes it worse in my mind because it's so common. But people that go through, and I understand, and because I worked SLED for a lot of years, that there are rules and regulations that have to be followed in government accounts. But when you write an RFP for a specific vendor, when you already have a vendor picked, and you make competitive teams run around in circles when you have no intent of purchasing anything except the product that you wrote the RFP for. I've been doing this so long that I've learned to look for when it asks for a certain brand name licensing. I know that they're speccing this RFP for vendor X. So it's not even really attempted to be sneaky sometimes. The spirit of an RFP is supposed to be to request everyone put forth their best showing and then see who the best tool is for the job. And very often, most of the time, it's a waste of time because the decision has been made and this is just part of their policy. I think that's kind of shady myself. And maybe just because I see it so often. It's certainly not the least ethical thing I've ever seen. But I feel like it's so common that it's like a running joke in the industry. And yet we all continue to do it and participate in it.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen that and not to get away from it, but I've seen that in hiring too. In government, you have to always put out a job posting and say, hey, we're actually looking for people, when in reality, they already know who they're going to hire. They're going to, bring someone, their friend or someone that's been working there. They're going to promote them from within, but they're not allowed to do promotion from within just out of promoting. They have to actually put a job posting out there. So I've seen that go for, and you're right, it's a lot of government work that you'll see RFPs when they already know who they want to bring in. For me, the ethics behind a lot of things, and it's funny because Brad puts this here: our solution makes your network 100% secure.
Oh my God.
God,
yes.
do I hate that, but I have seen it, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen products like that where that's their key word.
Well, so I feel like that happens in companies where the marketing team is completely disconnected from the engineering teams and from reality. I don't see that kind of stuff where I am, but that's because we have been around a long time and we have a very advanced marketing department and they know better. But absolutely in the startups, when you're talking about sub 50 people and maybe the marketing person is somebody's sister-in-law, you know what I mean? Like, or brother-in-law, and they maybe aren't so familiar with security, but are super talented at search engine marketing or optimization or something like that. It makes sense to hire someone who just doesn't realize how ridiculous that statement is. So I try to take it easy on the startups because they're doing what they can. But that kind of crap will always make me roll my eyes. Really, the airport marketing in general, there are a couple of vendors that just insist on putting banners up at every airport and charging stations and I wonder, like, what do you get out of that, really?
Yeah.
Are people buying your product because of that? It feels like it's part of the joke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my two favorite ones as a CISO is when they throw the, hey, our solution's the single pane of glass, or look at all the AI ML stuff that we have in here, and it's like, would you realize that AI ML, that's different stuff.
And
Come
not
on.
is it just it's not just different stuff. ML is not all created equal, right? So ML is meaningless unless you're carefully curating the data you feed into it. So when I hear someone talk about machine learning, I just want to stop and go, oh, explain to me what that is.
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10 they're gonna go, like, okay, just don't.
I
Just
don't
don't.
know.
Yeah, my favorite one is telling them, oh yeah, go ahead and look who wrote the security guides to AI ML there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I that's one of the big challenges I think that I run into is trying to differentiate myself from the last 12 shysters that just walked in the door and put up 100 slides and vomited onto you like
Oh yeah.
security is a problem. Like, no shit, Sherlock. I hate it. I hate it because now, it ends up helping me because I'm not an idiot. So I don't talk to my customers like they're idiots. And that's a really low bar to clear, to be ethical, to just not treat my customers like they're morons. But unfortunately, it's real.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and someone said it because we brought up like one of the key buzzwords that people use is single pane of glass. And yes, don't get me wrong, I love a single pane of glass when it works. The problem is so many products that preach a single pane of glass, it ends up just being data overload, and you can't see anything. You can't figure out what you're looking at.
Or like what happened at the SOC that I was working on, we had 5 single panes of glass.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that a trap that is really common to fall into in this industry, as I've watched it evolve over the last 12 years, is the idea that having a single company that does a lot of things inherently. Okay, so there's some truth to allowing other people to do integration work for you, but thinking that a single company can reinvent the wheel in every single category is just not realistic. And so I think I'm really proud of the way that the company that I work for has built what we've done, because it's been all through acquisition. So we've gone out into the market and found the best thing and then bought it and brought it in and then just said, okay, keep doing the thing that you do well. We're not going to mess with you, but we are going to integrate your stuff with this stuff over here, which is different than promising someone magic fairy dust. So yes, I run into a lot of cynicism that is totally justified because other companies don't work that way.
Yeah, I know who you work for, and I've dealt with your products, and I have a love-hate relationship with them because of the bolt-on. Like, they bought a product, they acquired a company, and are still using it, but it feels bolt-on versus embedded.
Sure.
So it's not that it does something wrong. It's just that when you bolt on a bunch of things instead of the company or the product being designed around what you're trying to do, it kind of feels off to me. But that's not to take anything away from them, because what they do is amazing. It's just a different way to do them, do what you do. And I think that every company has value. It just depends on the company you're trying to sell to,
Yeah, and it depends on your individual program and what's appropriate for what you're trying to do, right? If you've got a smaller team and you really just need somebody else to offload, you don't have a guy on staff that or a human on staff that can do a lot of API scripting work for you and make your tools work together and save you operational time. You sort of have to rely on a player with the bench to do that for you. It's not going to be appropriate in every situation, for sure. I don't think there is any one size fits all.
Yeah, for sure. Everything's different. So I've got one for you. What's your take on FUD as a sales mechanism?
Oh my God, I hate it so much. I mock it pretty openly. So many of our competitors use it, and customers will sometimes, in all good faith, send me like a list of stuff that someone has said, that we can't do and only they can do, and a lot of it is charged with FUD. And so I feel like, just having done this as long as I have, if you walk in the room and feed a customer FUD, it's because you don't feel good about your own solution, and so you have to go look over here. People know security is a problem. I don't bash people over the head with 5 slides about how likely they are to get popped. They know that. They live that reality every day. And so I feel like FUD is part of that lower end of the spectrum, more immature approach to what should be the intent of helping someone, and not just cramming a bunch of products down their throat. And so when you start with FUD, that means you don't care. You should be starting with what the customer cares about first and foremost. And so FUD is unnecessary, because when they tell you what they care about, it's laced with things that they're afraid of. It's laced with uncertainty about their ability to execute the plans that they've made, or uncertainty around the fact that they don't have any plans and they need you to help them make them. So it's just not necessary. And I think it's really immature and stupid.
You want to hear the worst part about FUD that I ever faced? I had a vendor come in, and their first slide was a fake newspaper with my picture being fired because there was a hack in my company. That's how they started their vendor presentation, and says, "You don't want this to happen to you, do you?"
I've seen some pretty shady things, but that is by far the worst I think I've heard of.
And they used a bad picture of me too.
That's what you were reading.
Right, that's really what made them mad. It wasn't that they used a good picture. It was
they used one that I didn't have my beard.
But I look at it, and fear, uncertainty, and doubt drives a lot of marketing. And so when we look at sales today, regardless of whether it's in IT or security or anything else, you see FUD is huge. So it's very frustrating. But Corgi has joined us today. Thank you, Corgi. And she has an awesome question. How frequently do you have to recommend external resources to clients?
Oh, extremely often. Almost every day. I mean, we don't play in every field, and we never will. And I've listened to customers talk about, hey, I fought for 2 hours with this, stupid SIM we bought this morning. And even though I don't play in that field, it's still valid information. So if the next customer says like, oh yeah, we're kind of looking at SIMs, I want to be a good partner to that customer. And so if I know something firsthand from another customer in the same industry, I will tell them like, oh yeah, I heard, such and such is pretty good, and such kind of, this is the problem with it, and whatever. We also don't, very often when it comes to my mid-size or smaller customers, the problem is more operational than it is technical. And so I will very often recommend, some of the smaller managed services players, because they don't necessarily carry the price tag of what we do at my company, but it's appropriate for their size of organization and more than what they're doing today. So I have a lot of good relationships with my local partners, and I know what they do well. And so typically, if I know that the price tag from my company is going to be 6 figures to install widget X, and they can't afford that, I'll go, hey, you need to go talk to this guy over here. He can do it for a quarter of that, and he's really great. I've seen him do, multiple successful deployments. So from both an operational perspective and from a technology perspective, I very often have to recommend external folks.
Yeah, well, it's important to build your credibility in the industry, is to be a partner, to be of value. I mean, we use this all the time, but it's using the value add. It's used in the bad way, it's used in the good way, but you want to do that to be a true partner.
I do, and I'm in it for the long haul. I mean, this industry, as much as we like to think of it being large, is actually pretty small and pretty incestuous, especially here in the Midwest, where, I don't know, everybody knows everybody. And so I've always assumed that I'm going to see this customer again. And my goal is to build a brand as a good partner. And so when they go to the next company, they're going to think to call me for help. Whether I get to help them or not is based on my account list, something arbitrary that's decided by my company. But always I want to maintain those relationships. And, I think part of that is just being involved in the community. I got to shout out SetKC at any opportunity. We're a pretty great, pretty extensive local community. So I will often just run into customers, whether current or past, listening to the latest talk on somebody who discovered a vulnerability in a thing, and then we go out for drinks after. So we're a pretty tight knit community, and everybody kind of knows everybody. So there's no point in even risking my personal brand with FUD or shadiness, because people remember and people talk.
Well, I was down there. I lived in your area for 2 years, and I did go to a lot of the SecKC stuff. I used to work for that big healthcare company in your area.
That one, the one that just got acquired.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So SecKC, big props to you guys. That's a great organization in the area. So
good people.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things. You talked about the community being small, and we talk about that at work too, is, people apply for jobs, and we've seen people apply for work and do different things, and they don't realize that everybody talks. We all know what you do on the outside. We all know whether or not you have been ignorant or rude or something like that to people in industry, and we know the job. So it's definitely one of those things where we are small. We definitely are a small collective of people in comparison to a lot of other industries.
Yep.
So, just like sales, and I know quite a few people in sales, the community as a whole, especially if you're embedded in it, guess what? It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like, somebody knows somebody that knows somebody. And so when you're applying for a job, the calls are going to be made. Hey, do you know this person? Oh no, but I know they worked with this guy or worked with him, so things like that. But Corgi is back with another question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corgi. I'm loving it, man. You're making my job easy, girl. You really are. So she said, so cool to get this level of insight, Lena. How important is basing solutions off an organization's revenue in your day-to-day?
Oh man. So I actually don't think about that at all. I actually wrote a talk not very long ago that I've given a few times now, that is not anything super exciting, but really just a different way of looking at triaging my customers' problems in using game theory to apply how the methodologies that attackers are likely to use to your defense spending prioritization. So if 92% of the time DNS is used as some part of the kill chain, maybe you should filter your outbound DNS. And so what I did was use statistics from a few different intelligence organizations, not just ours, but a few reports that were put out, and sort of averaged together, okay, what are the likely attack methodologies, and then therefore what technologies mitigate that particular type of attack. And that's what I prioritize first to customers. If they already have something in that, I go to the next solution in the stack. Okay, well, if lateral visibility is a hole in your practice, and ransomware is likely to very likely to use lateral propagation as a form of spread, then I'm going to suggest that you take a look at a tool that considers east-west visibility internal to your company. So I do try to take a statistical approach, a mathematical approach to what's important to a customer. Thankfully, our licensing scales with company size, so I don't really have to think about how much revenue they make in a year versus what our products cost, because it's all proportional to the number of users, number of machines, the kind of things that we license by. So I do try to take a little bit more of an analytical approach to what's helpful to my customers, because I feel like especially the further down market you go, the more overwhelmed they are in general. And you can't give them, this was actually born of, here we go. So this was actually born of an internal thing that we were doing for a long time called safe workshops, which were really cool in the sense that you got really far down the weeds into a customer's business, how they make revenue, and what security controls are protecting those sources of revenue. However, the end result ended up being every single time, we would spend a 4-hour workshop with this customer, and we would hand them a list of stuff they needed to go buy. And almost every customer, especially when I was in the sled space, would look at me and be like, okay, I know I need that stuff, but I don't have unlimited budget. And even if I did, I don't have unlimited people to deploy those tools and look at their dashboards and do something with the data. So I needed a way to be more prescriptive and be more helpful than that. And so I got drunk with my engineer counterpart in a bar before I had to go catch my flight home to Kansas City in Chicago. Shout out Brian Crocker, my former engineer partner in crime, who listens to me ramble and scratch things on napkins. And I was like, there's got to be a way to assign values to. And so what we basically did was we took the safe workshop and we would say, okay, what it translates into is a place in the network. Here are the mitigating technologies that sit between an attacker and an end user in that part of the network where that sensitive data lives. And we would rank it by the amount of revenue that part of the network was responsible for, whether it was a football stadium for a university or, grants in the form of research data, whatever. And so we just started assigning values based on revenue produced. And then we would assign I used a spreadsheet and tally marked how many times a particular technology was relevant to protecting X, type of data, which was relevant to X kind of revenue being produced. And so it was very, very basic tally marks on an Excel spreadsheet. But it was a way to assign weight and value to doing this first and this second and this third, which is at the very least something that I can do to help alleviate some of the stress that's created when I hand a customer a list of 10 things and tell them, you need to go buy this, whether it's us or someone else, you need to go buy X. And so that actually evolved into some other smarter people than myself at Cisco took that concept and that information, that data, and turned it into an app. So that's an app now internal to Cisco that I'm sure nobody uses, but started as a drunken cocktail napkin exercise. So I don't use customer revenue. I try to use other factors in recommending stuff.
And that's awesome. And the fact that you wrote it on a napkin initially, because that's a lot of times, and again, I relate things to like where I work because we do talk about these things, is a lot of your best ideas come from just like hanging out, like not being at work, not doing like a team meeting, but like hanging out and just BSing at a bar or at a smoke pit or whatever. A lot of the best work gets done when you don't feel like it's work, when you're just talking and things come up. So it's very, very much a great thing that this came from that. But on that note, Jermaine Wilson on YouTube, man, people in chat have this, are taking care of business for me today. So he doesn't know if it was discussed already, and it wasn't, Jermaine. So you're good. Lena, how do you go about approaching organizations, or is that somebody else's job, i.e. cold calling, LinkedIn, or what have you?
So I'm pretty spoiled in my current role in that we are a very large company and we have a presence in every single account in some form or fashion. Now, likely in a lot of instances, we don't necessarily have a Cisco security footprint in every account. They may be a route switch customer or a collab customer or something like that. But that's why I don't have to place cold calls or stalk people on LinkedIn, is because if I want to talk to customer X, I will reach out to their account manager and just offer my help. And they will ask the customer, hey, do you want to know what we're up to? Do you want to know what the latest and greatest is? Do you want to know how we can help you? And if the customer is amenable to it, they set me up with a meeting. So that is my current life. I definitely have been in this industry longer than my current role. And I've worked for startup companies where I had to do some cold calling. In fact, my very first job in security was at a partner on their cold calling lead generation team. So back in 2009, I had to cold call 100 CISOs a day. That was the metric that I was supposed to hit, was 100 calls in a day. And then try to get them to talk about anything, whether it was, I need to buy a SIM, I'm looking for endpoint technology, I need a pen test, we just got hacked and I need IR help, whatever it was. That particular partner, which was Fishnet Security at the time, they are now part of Optiv Security, but we were a vendor-funded lead generation team. So we got comped and recognized based on how many qualified leads we passed over to an account manager to then do something with it, to go meet with the customer and follow up. So I have absolutely lived that life. I will say it taught me a lot about not being afraid of no, not being afraid of being hung up on, and understanding how people in the industry thought when I was very, very brand new to the industry. So saying I'm green is not even touching this. I didn't know anything about anything, but I did have to learn a little bit about everything in order to be relevant in those conversations and get them to not hang up on me. So one of the things I did was when CGIS requirements first hit the street, we happen to resell RSA tokens. So I just started looking up sheriff's offices' phone numbers and started calling sheriff's offices and talking to whoever would answer the phone about in leadership about these requirements, what they mean, how they can solve them. And then if I could get them to say like, yeah, okay, I probably could use some help with that. Bam, I have a lead I hand over. But I am glad that I am no longer in that role. It was a little soul-sucking, to say the least. But yeah, I'm pretty spoiled now. Now I just, I get brought in when there's a relevant conversation that needs to happen. I don't do a lot of cold calling or interrupting people's lunch to get them to take a meeting with me.
Yeah, and ethical parts of that, going back to the topic here, is I see just on my own LinkedIn a lot of these people just connecting with you, and instead of talking to you, they go for the hard sell immediately. I mean, it's like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The industry is too fragmented, and unfortunately, the way to stand out at this point is just to be a good partner.
Yeah.
It's just like I said earlier, such a low bar to clear, but just don't be a shyster and you'll be good.
Yeah, but again, when we're looking at the ethics of it, like a lot of that is, and what I have seen, especially on things like LinkedIn, where that message comes immediately, a lot of that initial pitch is FUD.
Sure.
The vast majority of it is FUD. Is, hey, you could have this, or this. Dude, do you see what I do? I know what I could have in any given network that I'm a consultant for. Why are you trying to sell me something?
Yeah, I mean, and that's where you're going to find those folks are early in career and just haven't learned the lesson yet to treat people like humans and with respect and as if they are intelligent, and see if you can help, and if you can't, just to get out of their face.
Yeah, and there's a lot of emails like that too. People get your email and they're all of a sudden you're getting like cold emails of, hey, have you seen what our product can do?
Oh my God. And I'm friends with CISOs that I have no business relationship with, but are just friends of mine. And they have sent me the most cringe-worthy examples of people being like, oh, I was hoping to catch you. You've ignored my last 3 phone calls, like trying to guilt them into talk. Like, oh
Yep.
my God, it just hurts me.
I get those ones too. I'm like, dude, if I didn't respond the first 3 times, I'm not going to respond to you the next 6. Like, come on.
I get about 10 a day though, like that.
Yikes.
And again, it comes down to me, there's a lot of ethics that goes into sales. You don't want to lie to your customer. You don't want to oversell or overpromise something. And I see that a lot in like MSSPs and MSPs. They overpromise. And if you can promise you're going to have the same analyst or the same engineer every time you're on a call, then you better be able to deliver. And I've seen companies that offer that, but then don't. Like when the sale is done, now you've got like calls with 10 different people.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into the way things are organized that I don't always agree with. And I do think that part of being ethical in this job is advocating for my customer internally. And so, there are a lot of times when I speak up when I maybe shouldn't say this is dumb, this process is broken, this is idiotic, this is my customer is suffering, and here's how. But at the same time, the right people receive that message as factual and relevant and take it to heart. I mean, I've had products vastly changed based on my customer feedback because I'm fine with. And thankfully, the way our company operates, everyone's fine with me bringing a customer directly to a product team and going, hey, this is dumb. This should not work like this. And they will listen. And if more than one customer asks for it, or it's severe enough, I have seen our products change based on things that people have asked for. And I think that goes into it as well, not just showing up when there's a PO to be cut, but advocating for your customer all the time.
Oh, yeah. And it's
for
after
sure.
the sale. That's the after the sale care that a lot of people in sales say, hey, now I'm going to hand it to my delivery managers, and, they disappear.
So to play devil's advocate about that, sometimes we don't have a choice in that matter. Sometimes, so I'll give you an example. When we engage our advanced services team in an engagement, that comes with a project manager, and it is absolutely up to them to herd the cats when it comes to the implementation engineers, making sure that they're on task hours wise, on track with the SAL. And so I sort of have to step out of the way. Now I'm always copied, and I'm there on every meeting I have time to be on. But I do rely on my customers to tell me, like, hey, this isn't operating the way it should, or, we in the SAL it says you're going to do X, and they're saying that that's not possible. Whatever the case may be, I'm still around. But sometimes we're required to stand aside. And the way that things are evolving, in particular in my company, the way that we're evolving into a software company, there is a lot of like, okay, now that we've established the use case and the customer has implemented the technology, on a monthly basis, they have this assigned, engineer that knows they want XYZ and product improvements, that is, babysits every support case. I don't have the scale. I'm assigned currently 220 customers. When I worked in SLED, I had 4,000 customers across 4 states. I don't have the scale to be everywhere at once. And so sometimes that is part of the job that is required. But hopefully my customers trust me to the point where they will come to me, and I find that they have no issue with using me as the one throat to choke, and that's fine, because then at least I always know what's going on if something does go sideways. But yeah, sometimes that's just part of the job that we have to abide by to be able to get to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And it's rough. It's always rough to be in that situation. And I've seen a lot of sales engineers that try to do the best they can, but they can only do so much because of the way the policy or whatever is written. Like, hey, you got to be hands off. You made the sale. Now it's up to the project manager, the delivery manager, the engineering team to really take the reins. But it's unfortunate when the sales team makes the sale and then the actual delivery doesn't deliver.
Yeah, you got to hold your sales teams accountable for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You got to go back to them and go, hey, man, we talked about, and so I will always advocate to my customers, let's put everything in writing. So if you have a request, I'm going to reply to you an email with that request so that we have it somewhere where we can say, you asked me for X on this day, I gave you Y on this day, and it's documentable, so that if they get reassigned to somebody else, or maybe that point person at the customer leaves and goes to a different place and someone else has to take over, that it's all documented, not just from like a I can prove it perspective, but more for a let's make sure we're taking accurate notes and records. And so when we go to delivery, we can say, hey, on this date we talked about X, on this date we talked about Y. These things have to be included in the SAL. That's why I'm part of the scoping process for services. If I'm going to hand them off to a partner, as I talked about doing earlier, I will be part of that scoping call as well, because it's up to me to translate what the customer needs into what the technology is capable of doing. And so sometimes I'm the only person in the room that knows exactly what needs to be done and said. The customer will be like, oh, I don't know, we talked about this. Remember the thing that we needed? I'm like, oh, yes. Hey, guy from partner X, make sure in the SAL that we've accounted for X, Y, and Z. So there's a lot of that translation that has to go on. But then, yeah, I do have to hand it off, and I have to count on my customer to come to me if some stuff is not going as planned.
Well, we have a lot. You talked about the shysters out there,
There's a
and we're
lot.
talking about. I have come across a lot of folks that they want to make the sale so much that they're yes, we can do this. Yes, we can do this. Yes. Oh my God, we can bring you the sky and the moon. And okay, the sale is made, and now you've got to deliver that sky and the moon.
Yeah.
Talk to us about when you see in the industry, not just in your area, but in what you've seen in the industry from people who completely overpromise.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about earlier, the industry's not that big and people remember, which is why, I do, like I said, encourage people to get things in writing, whether it's, hey, I'm going to buy your thing, but only if you make it do X, get it in writing, so that there is no, I mean, even if it's not a legal document, even if you're just pointing to an email or a Teams message or whatever, hey, you said this was going to be delivered, and get dates. Don't allow them to just say like, oh, we'll do it someday, because I've been to those product management meetings and seen the list of requests and improvements and enhancements that get put to those teams, especially at a company with the scale of ours. And so I don't leave a call without getting a commitment of dates. I want to know, you go back to your team and discuss if you can do it, the level of effort to do it. And then I want to know, is it going to be available March 1st or is it going to be available June 1st? So we can set realistic expectations so that no one is unhappy. People are making purchases sometimes based on that timing. And so it's really important to get, in our speak, we call that a committed feature or a committed enhancement, versus an uncommitted roadmap item, which is a wish list, basically. Which with no guarantees. If it's a committed item, we're going to deliver it, and then it becomes about timing at that point. But yeah, I mean, if you job hop every 2 years and you promise stuff and don't deliver, I feel like there's no way that's not going to come back to bite you, just simply because of the number of customers, especially here in the Midwest, that I had in this same role on the sled team that are now in my commercial space. Like, if I did that, I would have to change jobs. I would have to go somewhere else to get away from that. And even then, like, what's the likelihood that I'm going to sign up at other vendor company X and then be reassigned that same account, and they're going to remember that I promised them and didn't deliver? So it's just not worth it.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like you said, everybody knows everybody. It's so small, and I'm going to keep coming back to that because it's true. Especially in sales and the different organizations that are out there, we know each other. We know what each company can do. So there's absolutely no reason for overselling or overpromising, because guess what? Now that organization is going to hear from this customer and this customer and this customer not to buy that product. And it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for the MSSPs and the MSPs especially that have suffered that, where the sales team has oversold because they didn't discuss things with the engineering and the actual deliverable team. And that's where that ethics of sales comes in, where sales is like, oh yeah, we can do it. And I've seen it firsthand, where I've had a sales guy talk to me and be like, hey, you can do this pen test and for like $3,000 in 10 days. And I'm like, dude, they want like 10 websites and 1,000 computers. There's no way to do a valid pen test at their scope of what they're looking at my rate for that amount of money. It's just impossible.
Maybe do an automated vuln scan and then spit out the report from
right.
Yeah, no, I live in that space as well. And that's where it comes down to accountability within organizations. If I pulled some shit like that at my current job, the services delivery manager would drag me into court and go, well, the customer said you said this. That's also why you protect yourself with paperwork, right? Whether you're talking about an implementation statement of work or whether you're talking about a pen test statement of work, you have to enumerate exactly what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's expected, what's out of scope. And then the customer has to sign it. That's the whole purpose of that document. Yeah. So that should never happen in an organization that has any kind of good administrative practices or accountability whatsoever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. The worst was like in the middle of that process, having a team member leave that could help accommodate, and then they bounce, and you're just like, well, shit, I'm screwed.
Well, fuck me, I guess.
Like this. All right, I guess we're just going with it.
No way.
I've been in the other side, being in the delivery side and being in the product development side, and getting told, hey, this big, huge company wants this, and this. And I'm like, you do realize our product doesn't do that. It will take another year of development to get us to that point. And they said, well, just stick more people on it and just do it in the background manually and just provide them the reports. And when the chairman says that, you got to do it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's questionable as well. But yeah, I would say from the salesperson level, there should be controls in place to forbid that behavior, like written statements of work.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's where it comes down to, and the whole basis of what we're talking about today is the ethics behind it and the ethics in sales, and where you see, because of bonuses, because they get a commission, and a lot of salespeople get paid off of what they sell, they don't care. And it's unfortunate because, like you said, there's very good salespeople out there that develop partnerships, and um, that relationship means a lot. The way they look to their customers means a lot, which means they've got to be honest. Can my product deliver? Well, I can't deliver on this. Whereas there's others out there that just want the money and will be like, yeah, we could do it. We could do it. We could do whatever you want. We got you. It's okay. It's 100% secure. Like,
Yeah, so what are you going to do next week or next month when people figure out that you're full of crap? I don't know. But if you're going to do it long term, you just can't roll that way.
So, what do you think of, in our industry, salespeople who are very good at sales but do not know technology? And we've got a lot of those where they're great salespeople, but they're weak in, they don't understand the technology, they don't understand the field, but they're out there selling this stuff. What do you think about that? And I know because I've seen them.
You have touched on a hot button issue to me, and that is, if you can't understand the technology, you should go do something else, in my opinion. And that is controversial to old school salespeople.
Yeah.
That is even controversial within my company. There is this idea that we can be salespeople and be successful without really understanding what we're selling. And I vehemently disagree with that. I think to be a valuable partner, I have to be the bridge between what our stuff can do and what the customer needs. And there's no way to do that if I don't understand how the product works. People think it's weird when I show up to the annual product management roadmap trainings, because it's not something that people in my role typically do. But again, or that it's weird that I'm on the capture the flag team, or that I participate in those types of competitions. It's a real old school, unfortunate way to look at things. I actually had a manager snap at me one time over dinner with the whole team in front of my peers. It was not one of my favorite moments in my current job, where I was asking for more resources. They were handing out these virtual boxes that were basically a whole demo kit of everything that we could do in one giant virtual appliance. And I wasn't getting assigned one because I was shorthanded at the time. And so I'd said, well, just send it to me. Well, it's not for your job role. It's for the implementation engineers. Well, send it to me. I'll use it in the same way they would. They wanted to use it for evaluations and customer sites and stuff. And he said, if you want to go work in implementation, go work in implementation. That's not your job. I was like, and there's a real issue. And I think it exists in the industry, not just at my company, but I've seen it firsthand at my company, where they are loath to imagine that an engineer could be a salesperson, or that a salesperson could be an engineer. There's this very old school mentality of you're one or the other. You either have one skill set or you have another skill set. And I think that our jobs should be much more 97% closely aligned than people think that they should be. Yes, I agree. I think part of what has made me successful with my customers is being able to bring actual value to a meeting. And if you don't understand the technology, you can't bring value to a meeting. You could order lunch, you could send out the WebEx invite, but what good are you to me if I'm a customer if you don't know what you're talking about? So, yeah, that is a hot button issue for me that I kick and scream about. Thankfully, I work for a company that's very supportive of all my curiosities, and they fund me to go places like DEF CON and to take Sans Windows forensics classes because I'm curious, and not because it's required for my job, but because it helps me understand what my customers go through to do a forensic investigation. So people can think it's weird all they want. I don't really give a crap.
Yeah, definitely. And Trash Panda says it here. He ran a meetup in Philly, and he always told salespeople to bring an engineer because he wasn't giving a salesperson a platform. And it's because of that reason, because there's a lot of organizations out there where the salespeople don't know the engineering side. They don't know the back end. They don't know the product. And I have gone to conferences and I've talked to sales engineers and salespeople. And I'm like, and I ask questions and they're like, oh, well, I don't know that, but you can talk to an engineer if, we partner or whatever, this, that, and the third. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want. Like if you're going to be at a conference, you should have a developer. You should have somebody there that knows the product for the questions that are going to be asked.
Yep.
Especially at a tech conference.
Yeah, I always tell people the only real unique talent that I have and value that I bring to a conversation with a customer is being able to translate the highly technical into regular English. I think it was Einstein who said, if you can't explain it to a child, you don't really understand it yourself. And I feel like, well, I don't mean that any of my executives are children, but it definitely helps to be able to explain it with finger paints and crayons if necessary, because it's, it's to the point somebody said in chat about CISOs not being super technical, and I think that's totally valid. I think it's a different job role, and particularly in the larger organizations, they have to be much more focused on the business side than on the technology, and they really very much have to rely on their technical people underneath them that report to them to tell them what's up, tell them what they need, and it's up to me to translate that need into a technology. So I think that it's good to be able to speak both languages, but I don't think there's any value to only being able to speak the business language without the technology behind it.
That's right. And we're getting to see some of these CISOs that are, the business-minded CISOs, and then you've got your technically minded CISOs. They're still out there, not as much, but it's good to see that and be able to explain that. But a CISO needs to understand that there's smarter people in their organization that know these things, and that's a mental EQ. The emotional quotient of the CISO. So another question for you is, when you see I've been hit with the bad side. So as we talk about ethics, some of the stuff that I've seen is, like we talked, the people that say too much and say yes, yes, yes to everything. Then there's the other ones that just focus on that technology and do not become a partner. So talk to us about the other side, where it's like so focused, I'm going to fix this one thing for you and forget the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I experience this acutely on a regular basis because we do have such a wide breadth of solutions that it can be really easy to get caught up in a certain thing and a certain question. And I think one of the only other, if at all, real unique differences that I bring to a meeting is very often I feel like I'm the only one in the room that gets what the customer is really asking, not the words that are coming out of their mouths. Often the words that are coming out of their mouths are, can your product do XYZ? And what I hear is, I'm worried that my team is going to have to spend an inordinate amount of time on this particular solution that they don't have, or that it's not necessarily going to solve the bigger problem, even if you can solve this little problem over here. And so I will try to echo back to the customer, okay, you asked, it's actually happened today. A customer was asking if they were able to point their firewall management solution that is ours to our cloud firewall solution. And one of the engineers on the call from my side of the fence immediately jumped in and started explaining technically how to do it. Oh, you'll go create an IPsec tunnel from here, you'll point it to our cloud, and then that's where the inspection will happen, and blah, blah, blah. And as soon as he was done talking and took a breath, I said, okay, but what I'm hearing you ask is there a good reason to do it that way? Or are we being redundant? Why should we go through that level of effort? And so I think if you get too focused, to your point, on, I heard him ask, can I do this with that? And what I heard was he wants to know technically where do I go to click the button to do it? When really what they were asking is for our professional assessment on, are they being redundant, or is it worth the effort, and why? And so I think you're absolutely spot on in that there's often conversations where I feel like the value that I bring to the conversation isn't necessarily technical, but more so in hearing, because everyone's fears are essentially the same, right? There's a subset of fears that involve, cost, operational time spent for the team, general value that's going to bring to the overall security posture. They're really about the same stuff. And so if you're really listening, you can answer the question in a way that both answers the technical question and really gets to the heart of what they're actually worried about. And that's what makes a good partner.
And I've got one last question, and then I'll let this guy do his thing. But the other one is when a salesperson says, "This is a turnkey solution."
Yeah. So I like to use different terms that are more officially, that are more descriptive. Like, I do often refer to umbrella as a blunt instrument, because it is very much so. It is one of the only truly, arguably set it and forget it solutions that I've ever seen, in that it will just always work. Now, should you log into it and regularly look at the data and do something with the information about hosts that you have that are trying to call out to malicious destinations? Absolutely. And does that take time for someone on your team? Absolutely. But if you don't do that, it's still going to work for you. There are other solutions where I have to say to the customer, this thing takes some care and feeding. And here's exactly what I mean by that. For instance, our internal east-west visibility solution that uses NetFlow, it has to baseline what's normal in your environment to be able to give you actionable data about things that it sees outside the norm. But to understand what's normal, you have to look at more than a day's worth of traffic. And so I'll tell a customer, this thing is not going to be usable to you for 30 days at least, once we set it up, because it's got to see some stuff. But again, that's all in setting proper expectations so that customer, comes back to you and continues to do business with you. Because if you don't set realistic expectations, why would I ever talk to you again as a customer? You told me it was magic and easy, I would never have to log into it. Now I'm spending X amount of time. So it's just, yet again, trying to be a good partner, trying to be transparent, sometimes maybe to a fault about level of effort, in an ongoing day-to-day level of effort. And I'll suggest to a customer, like, when they ask me that kind of question, like, how much care and feeding is this? And I'll tell them the truth. Like, if you want to just let it run, it's still going to help you. But you absolutely should do something with that information, which is going to take seconds.
Yeah, definitely. And what I love that you said is care and feeding, because in the spaces that I've worked, which has been like SIM and a lot of blue team stuff, it has been very much even if you look at your firewalls and XDR and all this other stuff that's out there, a lot of times it takes care and feeding. It takes some TLC. We see EDR and people are like, oh, I'm going to put carbon black in place or something. It's just going to work. And it's like, who told you that? Because that's not how these things work. You have to have policy. You have to enable different settings. You have to do all this stuff to make it work. And so for, even SIMs, people are like, oh yeah, this we'll get a SIM and it'll just work. No. Like, who told you that? Because I have yet to see a SIM that you can just turn on and it works.
Yeah. I know who told her that. I know exactly who told her that. Dancing grandma told you that.
Oh,
and today
God.
It's got some music.
I love it. Papa coming through.
That's part of the whole conversation, right? If I'm setting you up with a solution and I know it takes care and feeding, and I know because I've spent time with your team that they don't have time for that, it's up to me to go, hey, you're going to want some learning credits so you can send your team through training, or hey, you're going to want advanced services to come do this for you. Like, that's part of the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. Look, by the way, I need that shirt you're wearing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would love to plug my friend. So I'll put her handle in the chat. But a friend of mine in the industry was tired of all the industry shirts being like unisex only for dudes.
Hold up. I make ones that are for everybody.
Yes, you do. And that's awesome. It's just very, very common to go to an RSA conference and go
Oh,
to
yeah.
20 vendor tables, and 19 of the shirts are cut like a box for a dude,
Yeah.
which is fine. But anyway, her business is called Securities. And like I said, I'll drop her handle in the chat. Security Star, I'm sorry. She's super nice, and she's got awesome shirts. She sent me a few to try out for feedback, and I love them.
Can you have her send me some? I'll get pictures.
I'll hook you up. All
right.
Yeah, but you gotta wear the women's ones and then do the pictures.
I'll do it. Actually, no, I have my wife wear them. I ain't gonna wear them. My wife will wear them. But no, I do. I love all the swag. That's why I always look out for what's out there. I do like that shirt. I need to get one. But I look at the different things, and Eric still is going with this. Now he got the robot up here. Like, you're killing me, Smalls. Look, for those that are listening on the audio podcast, you miss out on so much. You really need to tune in live or watch the replay on YouTube. But you know, I look at it, and we're at 5 minutes to the top of the hour. We'll probably go late just because I like to go late sometimes. But I love what you're doing, and I love how you talk about the fact that as sales, you should know the product. You should know security. You should know IT. Like, these are things that should not really, you really shouldn't question. And it's very unfortunate in sales, like you said, there are organizations out there that are like, well, why is that so important? Why do they need to know? They're just selling. So they're just reading from a sheet or like a checklist. And I had that same problem when you deal with like Geek Squad. All they do is fix computers based off a checklist. So if your sales team is doing things based off a checklist of, oh yeah, we can do this.
So wait a second.
What are you doing?
Are you saying Lena is like Geek Squad?
Lena
is that
is
what you're trying to
different.
say?
No.
Come on.
Lena is different.
Come on.
Because Lena knows
Come on,
her
get
field.
him. Get him.
She can't, because she knows I said the right words,
He
and
did.
she can't touch me on it, because at the end of the day, she knows the field. She knows the industry. I've had her on the show for things other than sales. So if you haven't seen it, go back and watch the older episode. She's been on before.
I don't remember what we talked about. It was so long ago. I'm sure it was.
It was. I got to go find the episode. I'll share it later. It was a great episode, though. But yeah, so, you know, getting back to the ethics, because that was the primary focus of this episode. I was really thinking we were going to have a debate, but you're right. We don't have a debate because we agree on the ethics of sales. But ethically, here it is, ethically. Now you say, and I agree with you, that a salesperson should know the field. And it doesn't have to be in depth, but they should know the field. Ethically, do you feel it's right to have a salesperson that doesn't know the field that they're selling product for?
I don't think it's a matter of ethics. I think it's a matter of professionalism, of legitimacy. I mean, I think if you have a legitimate organization, you should hire people who know what they're talking about, or teach people that you hire to know what they're talking about. Which is why I'm really grateful for, you know, our education budget and the fact that I get to just go take, like I said earlier, a SANS class or two, which I took two, because I wanted to understand what my customers go through when they investigate things from a perspective that I wasn't going to get in any online Cisco training. Not technical training, but like online sales training. And so they supported that. I have great leadership, and they support my natural curiosity and my desire to know how everything actually works. So I think it's just, there are organizations who admittedly maybe don't have that kind of budget, especially down market in the startup industry. You know, when there are few employees, you maybe can't afford to pay top dollar for someone who is super up on stuff. And that's okay. I mean, people need to cut their teeth somewhere. And learn that lesson, that to bring value to a meeting, they have to know what they're talking about the hard way sometime. And I certainly did. But I also came up in the industry when it was in its infancy, 2009, before it was the way it is now by any stretch of the imagination. So it was a little bit safer to fail and fall on my face in that time frame than maybe it would be today, where it might be remembered more notoriously and with my current job and my current customer base. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of, can you pick and choose talent to that degree? And if you can, you absolutely should.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think it's hard in sales because there are definitely people that, and I'm sure everybody here knows there's a lot in industry that just can't talk to people or not to that, extent. So selling as a technical person can be very difficult. So finding someone technical that can, speak to the industry as well as do sales and speak to people is very, very difficult in our field. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those situations where, if you can pay for top talent, that talent should include being able just to have a foot in both worlds, a foot in the technical world and a foot in the plain English speaking world. And I'm very lucky and spoiled that I get compensated for doing exactly that.
Yeah, definitely. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I love what you've done and what you're doing. And I think that your tattoos are amazing. Those are awesome. I am very much a big fan of tattoos and ink. Me and my wife watch Ink Master, and we're really hoping it comes back. But yeah, definitely, I think that you do a lot for industry that I think a lot of other people don't do. And it's unfortunate, but as someone in sales, you keep a beat on the industry. Like, what's going on. You do your trainings and things of that nature. So kudos to you, because there are, unfortunately, people that I find and people that I see that don't do that. And I've seen it too often.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, one of those things that, like I said, it can be a maturity thing within the industry. It's certainly not the way I was day one. I've always been sort of naturally curious and into technology, but it became clear to me as this industry evolved that people just need help. And the only way to bring legit help is to know more than they do about a particular subject or series of subjects. So I always want to be useful, and that's the best way I know to do it.
Did you say technology?
God, he brought the robot back.
Oh
man.
What is that even from?
I don't even know. It's Eric. He does the craziest things, man. Like, I never understand with him.
Well, I gotta bring some humor to your dry,
Oh, get that out of here.
All right, come on, people in the chat, say something for me. Support me here, all right?
I love you, Eric. So, but we're at the top of the hour. We're over the hour. Look, if you're not following Dork Phoenix on Twitter, please go do so. Carolina has some amazing tweets that she sends out. Sometimes it's techie, sometimes it's shit posting, and sometimes you never know what it is. She's just an amazing person, so you never know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. Especially when she starts talking about barbecue.
Oh man, don't get me started on her barbecue. It's amazing. But you can get so much from her and so much from so many other people. Look, if you're not supporting CyberWarriorStudios either by subscribing, smashing that like, sharing our videos, why not? And then on top of that, go to CyberWarriorStudios.com to find all the way you can support us, to include Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, Cash App, and everything else. Eric Bilardo Cyber, right over here, guess what? He does news. So if you're into cyber news, that's where you want to go.
News, traffic, and weather on the 5th. No, go
ahead. If only it was that simple. But yeah, go to Eric Bilardo Cyber. Go ahead, subscribe to him. Great guy. I'm a co-host on his show every Thursday for New Battlefields, and when we do Raices Cyber. Hey, Jermaine. God, Jermaine, you're killing me. Talking about Eric, I only come here for you. God. All right. Look, I love you all. If you're listening to this on audio podcast, please start tuning in live or watching the replays on YouTube, as it will help us out. Go back to Eric Bilardo Cyber. Check him out. Carolina, I will definitely have you back on this show again, and we'll pick a different topic next time to kind of get a different viewpoint on things. So, Corgi, Jermaine, everybody else that's in chat, we had people join from LinkedIn today. We have people in Twitch and everywhere else. I love you all. Thank you for following, subscribing. Make sure you like. Tune in next week. We have Scott A. Jones coming in. We're going to talk GRC and education. So I will see you all next week.
Bye.